It's a long day.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just to make sure this is all really quick. We've been having a lot of technical difficulties lately with the microphone, so I sincerely hope everybody can hear me, although I probably don't really need a microphone to begin with. And you know, if you guys could just do me a solid next time and not mention specifically that I'm speaking, we might get a better turnout. Just kidding. It is that time of year in which people are traveling. It's that magical time where most people are on vacation, not me, but and they're traveling to visit family between Christmas and New Year's, etc., etc. And of course, Tuesday's New Year's Eve, Wednesday's New Year's Day. And that's the big time where we're all going to make our resolutions, and we're going to stick to them this year. Am I right? Yeah. Sure, why not? I was doing a little bit of research last night on the idea of New Year's resolutions, and I found a kind of compact list about the most popular ones. And I actually really like this list just because of how it kind of winds down at the end. All right, popular goals include resolutions to improve physical well-being, eat healthy food, lose weight, exercise, all that. Improve mental well-being, think positive, laugh more often. Improve finances, get out of debt. Improve your career, improving education. Improving yourself in general in an attempt to reduce stress. Take a trip, volunteer to help others. Get along better with people, improve social skills. Make new friends. Spend quality time with family members. Settle down, get engaged, married, have kids. Try foreign foods, discover new cultures, and pray more and be closer to God and be more spiritual. Those are the most popular New Year's resolutions according to Wikipedia, the resource on everything. But I mean, when you look at it, it's a good list. It's a solid list. It applies to a varying amount of people, generations, cultures, what have you. And it's one of those things that you look at that and you go, okay, there's something on that list that I can dive into. I love to reduce the amount of stress. My company that I work for is currently in the middle of inventory, and I literally mean currently in the middle of inventory. I got a free pass because of today, but my brave coworkers are working on their third straight day this weekend, and I will probably rejoin them after this. And it's one of those things where, like, yes, I would love less stress. I would love to take a trip. I would love to do any of these things on this list. But that list ends specifically with the idea of praying more, being closer to God, and being more spiritual. The idea of what can we as people do this year or this next year in order to improve our relationship with God. Because that's the thing about our relationship with God is no matter how much you do, no matter how much you pray, no matter how devout we are as people, there's always more that we can do as people. It is a goal that we strive for. It is something that we want to work towards as people. And it's not that you're not doing a good enough job. I'm not going to berate you for going to church, for praying, for having Bible study time with the family. It's not any of those things. But it's just the idea of looking internally and realizing that there's probably something more you can do during the week. And I'm going to be first in line to say yes. That's totally something that I could be doing. My relationship with God could definitely use a tune-up as far as my interaction with Him day to day. I talk to God every day. That is true. God, why am I stuck at this red light? God, why am I stuck in traffic? God, why isn't this work day over yet? And it's not a blaspheming thing. I'm literally asking God these questions. I want to know why, oh why, oh why. And that's one of the things we're going to be talking about today, is the idea of why, as people in our relationship with God, why do we internalize? Why do we focus on the idea of groaning and moaning? There's also the part of the sermon where I just realized I forgot to flip the viewfinder over on the camera, so I have zero idea if I'm in frame right now. So to anybody watching the video this week, if you can hear me, I apologize. But we'll just kind of roll with that. With goals, with resolutions, where do we start? We look at the one thing we want to do. We always want to do one thing. We want to read through the Bible in a year. We want to go to the gym more. We want to be sociable more. And that third one is really the one that I need to work on. I'm such a creature of habit that I work the same schedule every week with my job. and I'm usually so exhausted at the end of the workday that I really just want to go home and go to sleep. And so over the last couple of months, I've been kind of campaigning to go out more and to do more things and to engage with society more. I actually like to go to one of the local malls around me just to remind myself that there are in fact more people on this planet than the ones I interact with on a weekly basis. Because I go to malls and I'm often surprised just by the sheer number of people that live in this world. Look around and go, wow, they're all different ages, and like there are so many people, and this is crazy, And it's one of those things that's something that I'm trying to work on. So, like with New Year's resolutions, where do we start? Where do we fail? And where do we start over? That's usually the vicious cycle that we go through. There have been a lot of statistics done about the idea of New Year's resolutions, and one of the statistics was that in a study done of 3,000 people, 88% failed at the New Year's resolutions. 88% out of 3,000 people. And it wasn't like they failed outright. It wasn't like they got to January 2nd and said, well, I'm done. No more gym for me. That was a terrible 15 minutes. I'm never going through that again. It wasn't anything like that. It was they got into March, and they got into April, and things slowed down, and their routine kind of took over, and ultimately they simply failed to meet their goal. They failed to meet their expectations. And so, we have to look at the idea of what we're working towards. And New Year's resolutions are always grounded in one fact. They're always admirable goals. They're always something worth doing. Learning a foreign language, taking a trip, being a better neighbor. Like any of these goals are admirable. They're worth accomplishing, and they're worth dealing with. But there's something that we have as people, and this applies this time of year specifically. Because when we look back on the year, and I talked about this last year in my New Year's sermon, the idea about how we look back and we internalize, and we look back and we say, thank goodness that 2000X is over. Thank goodness that 2009 is over. That was a terrible year. But 2010 is going to be the year where everything gets better. Oh, thank goodness 2010 is over. That was even worse than 2009. But 2011 is right around the corner, and this is the year that we're going to improve. And we look at that, and the question is, why do we internalize like that? Can you really not think of all the good and wonderful and amazing things that happened in the last year? I can talk about how work was terrible and how we had all sorts of family problems. And my grandfather died last January, so that was how 2013 started off for the Junkins family. Is within a handful of days of the new year, of saying, this is it. This is where we're going to turn it around. My grandfather passed away. But then in February, my nephew was born. And so, why don't we focus on things like that? Why don't we internalize the good things? Why do we always look at that? We're going to be looking at today in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. We're going to be looking at verses 1 through 10, the idea of a relationship with God, the idea of what we can do to really just internalize, to look at how we can improve a relationship with God and how in turn that will improve our relationship with others and how it will improve our status in life in general, our ability to be happy, our ability to deal with the day-to-day. So we're going to be looking at 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 1 through 10. This is kind of a section going on here. Computer's moving so slow today. I guess this is the downside to the e-Bible concept. Looking at verse 1, Paul's talking about the idea of a new life. For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven not built by human hands. Meanwhile, we groan, longing to be clothed instead with our heavenly dwelling. Because when we are clothed, we will not be found naked. For while we are in this tent, we groan and are burdened, because we do not wish to be unclothed, but to be clothed instead with our heavenly dwelling, so that what is mortal may be swallowed up by life. Now the one who has fashioned us for this very purpose is God, who has given us the Spirit as a deposit, guaranteeing what is to come. Now, scholars look at this passage and they talk about the idea of why is our earthly dwelling a tent and our heavenly dwelling a building? Why make those two distinctions? Why not just use tent for both words? Why not just use buildings for both words? It's because it has to do with structural integrity. Tents are very limited structures. Camping's cool. Used to go camping all the time as a kid. I don't know if I'll ever sleep in a tent the rest of my life. It was a novel concept when I was a child. I'm sleeping on the ground outside. Why is that a good idea? We have cabins now. We have more permanent structures. And so we look at the idea of tents, and it's a mobile structure, but it's a weak structure. It's something that can be taken down by weather or circumstance. In the same way that we, in our human bodies, are weak. It's not to say that we're not strong by our standards, but the human body is weak. It doesn't take much to take us down. We're affected by weather, we're affected by illness, there's all sorts of factors. And so, for we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven. The idea of a building that we're in, the solid structure. You give me a tent and you give me this room with the climate controls and the electricity and the indoor plumbing, I'm going to go ahead and take that. I'm just going to roll the dice and decide that I'd rather sleep in a building like this than a tent outside. And so, it talks about the idea about how it was not built by human hands. It is a gift from God. I really like the way the verse 5 wraps up. Now the one who has fashioned us for this very purpose is God, who has given us the Spirit as a deposit guaranteeing what is to come. Paul talks about the idea of the inevitability of death. The thing that's going to come to each and every one of us. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He doesn't pause on us. He says, for we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God. And he talks about the idea of if, because there's no specific time. There's no designation on that. We don't have a countdown going on. You know, here today, gone tomorrow, can happen to any one of us. And so he really stresses the importance of that relationship with God, about how that connection with God, that baptism in Jesus, that saving from Him, really reinforces the idea of when we look at our lives, when we look at what's going on, that there's this really great section where it talks about it depends on how it's translated, but it uses the term in the translation I'm reading from, we groan. We groan. And I think about things I groan at. I groan at bad movies. I groan at bad jokes, I guess. But the core of what the word groan means is to kind of lament. To externalize your grief. To say that this is terrible. To let the world know that you are having a terrible time. I mentioned earlier we were doing inventory this weekend at work. That is a prime example of externalizing groaning. Because everybody, after 18, 20 hours of doing this total over a couple of days, it's one of those things that we really wear our emotions on our sleeve when we're at our weakest, emotionally and mentally and physically especially. We become so exhausted, we get to the point of tears that we just don't want to go on anymore. And so it is so much easier for us to focus on that because it's one of the things that I always talk about is the idea about how we as people always want to victimize ourselves. We want to be the victim. We want people to feel sorry for us. We want people to tell us that it's okay to feel this way. We want to be justified in our anger against the situation and the world and the circumstances that befall us. We just want to externalize that so much so that people will say it's okay. It's going to be okay. But that's the thing, in that moment we never think it's going to be okay. There's this philosophy I adopted a while ago, and it's kind of my mantra, especially for long weekends at work, long weekends of, long days of family crisis, whatever it may be. My mantra that I've adopted is that time is always moving forward, whether we like it or not. We have absolutely no control over that. I don't care how long the day feels. Because we all know that time somehow moves slower on the worst days and faster on the good ones. But time moves at the exact same pace. And so inevitably, eventually, the bad thing that you're going through is going to be over. You're going to get past it. I guarantee you that. No matter how bad a circumstance is, we have the ability to push through. We have the ability to persevere through it. Safe in the knowledge that when this is all over, there will no longer be a time where we groan. The example I always like to use before we get to the next and final part of the passage for today is think about the best day of your life. The good times, the people, the amazing food, the wonderful circumstance it was. Think about the best time it was. And amplify that to a number so far beyond comprehension. And it lasts forever. And that is what Paul is talking about. He's talking about the idea about how we will have a time where we no longer groan. Looking on in, continuing on verse 6. Therefore, we are always confident and know that as long as we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord. For we live by faith, not by sight. We are confident. Second time he mentions the word confident. Make a note of that. We are confident, I say, and would prefer to be away from the body and at home with the Lord. So we make it our goal to please him, whether we are at home in the body or away from it. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each of us may receive what is due us for the things done while in the body, whether good or bad. Looking at the idea of that last part. The idea that we are accountable for our actions, both good or bad. That's the simple matter of fact. And so our goal in life, and the thing that I really want to hammer away at, is when we look at January 1st, when we look at the idea of making resolutions, when we resolve to be better people, there's one thing I want you to really think about, is that when you get to April or March or April or June, and you fall, and you may or may not fall within that 88% of failure rates for New Year's resolution, spoiler alert, I'm probably going to. Resolve again. That's what I want to tell you today. That we should not mark ourselves by calendars when it comes to improving our relationships with people, when it comes to improving our health or our mental wellness or our relationship with God. We should not mark or limit ourselves by the calendar of the year. Because I say it every single year and it's redundant, but I love saying it. Next year is probably going to be just as good and just as bad as this year. There's nothing specific about January 1st that makes God go, oh, it's January 1st. Let's hit the reset button. And he reaches out, and I imagine there's a big red button that says reset. And he's like, all your problems have gone away. We're all going to start at square one. No more debt, no more problems, no more relationship issues, no more whatever it is. Let's just reset to January 1st. That's not how it works. And so when you get to that point in the year and you say, oh, I really wanted to read the Bible more. I really wanted to pray more. I really wanted to do charity more. I really wanted to do these things. But I guess I'll just put it off till January 1st next year. Don't. I implore that when you reach this point, just start over. Accept the fact that we as people are limited in our capacities. We need to sleep, we need to eat, we need rest, we need to mentally get away from it all. Regardless, even if I worked 23 hours a day for one day, even if I did that, if I got home, I would still do something before I went to bed. I cannot let a day be vanquished without some kind of entertainment or stimulation or fun. I can't do it. I'm just not that person. And so the resolution to myself is even after a terrible day, I get home and I do something for half an hour, 15 minutes, listen to music, watch a TV show, talk to somebody on the phone or the computer or whatever it is. Do something in your day that makes your day worthwhile. Because it doesn't matter how bad my day has been. It doesn't matter how much I groan, how much I externalize my grief and my anguish. If I go home and I do something, crack open your Bible, read a couple of passages. The reason the book of Philippians is my favorite of all time is because it only takes about 45 minutes to read. So that's always my go-to, is I need a recharge. I need to reconnect with God. I'll crack open Philippians and I'll read it again for the 100 millionth time. And it'll rekindle me and it'll reconnect. And so what I ask of you today is that as we progress in the new year, make your resolutions. Make them. Make them and stand with them as strong as possible. And when something gets in the way, resolve to do it again. If you want to read through the Bible in 1 year, and you get to April and realize that you didn't make it past Genesis, start over. That's the thing that I'm here to tell you today, is that there are no rules as far as our personal connection to God. There is no limitation. God does not hear your prayers in July and go, oh, you're just starting that now? Oh, I'm sorry. You've already missed the quarterly benefits. We're going to have to wait till the next quarter starts. We have a wellness program at my work, and it requires like very strict data keeping and talking to people and quarterly updates and blah, blah, blah. And if you miss one of those quarters, you're out of the program for the year. That's not how our relationship with God works. At any time, at any moment of the day, no matter what time it is, there are no holidays with God. God's not a bank. God is not the federal government. He is not going to look at New Year's Day and go, oh, I'm sorry, we're closed. You come back tomorrow between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Oh, wait, sorry. Cutbacks, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Sorry. But that's not how it works. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each of us may receive what is due us for the things done while in this body, whether good or bad. The idea of starting over, the idea of the clean slate, the reason why we adhere to that so sternly is because we feel like we need validation in our relationship with God. We feel like we need an excuse to start over. If I have any validation, if I have any pull, if I have any sway with you as a public speaker, I'm here to tell you today that you don't have to do that. And I hope there's a sense of encouragement in that. I hope we can be inspired by that, because that's really what I wanted to accomplish today. That was the one, I always have the Tim Junkins, one thing he wants to accomplish while speaking. And that's really the thing. And don't limit yourself in your willingness to be humble and start over based on the calendar. Admit to yourself that you didn't get very far. I saw a guest speaker in college, last little anecdote of the day. I saw a guest speaker in college who talked about the idea of reading through the Bible in 1 year as an admirable goal. He said Genesis is great, you got all the whiz-bang, you got Adam, and you got Noah, and that's all great. And Exodus is this crazy great story, and then you get to Leviticus. And that kind of got a murmur out of the crowd. And he goes, oh, I see you're reading Leviticus. And it's one of those things that when you set these goals, when you set these parameters for yourself, they're always admirable. They're always good. They're always something worth accomplishing. So take that one thing that you want to do this year and just do it. Do it not based on how other people react to it. Don't base it on the calendar. Don't base it on when you can get started. But when you get started, power through. Find the encouragement. Find the motivation necessary to accomplish the goals. Because it's out there. You just have to find it. The willingness of the human spirit, the willingness of our connection to God is so beautiful and it is so empowering that we are able to accomplish many great things. We put a man on the moon. Think I can drop 15 pounds. That's kind of how I look at it. Is we as people, through great efforts, we put satellites into space and robots on Mars. And maybe losing 15 pounds is a reasonable goal. Maybe reading a little bit more of the Bible. Maybe talking to God a little bit more every day. Because that's the one thing I do is I get home at the end of the day and I say, I'm sorry to God. I'm like, God, I could have done more today. I'm not going to obsess over it. I'm not going to ruin myself. I'm not going to do worse tomorrow because I did bad today. But I'm going to resolve to do more. If you're here today and you need to make that connection, if you need to resolve yourself to be a better person with God, if you need to be baptized, if you need to be resurrected through the power of Christ, if you need to reconnect with God, if you say that I'm not limiting myself to the calendar, but I do need to reconnect to God, I ask you to contemplate that as we stand and sing the Song of Invitation.
There's a fountain free, 'tis for you and me. Let us haste, oh, haste to its brink. 'Tis a fount of love from the source above, and He bids us all freely drink. Will you come to the fountain free? Will you come? 'Tis for you and me, thirsty souls. Hear the welcome call. 'Tis a fountain open for all. There's a living stream with a crystal gleam from the throne